Hello again and welcome back to our course on Word 2019. We're really getting through our course now. We are down to section 16 where we're going to talk about some other features that you have in Word. And in this first module, I really want to talk to you just a little bit about some of the options that you have in Word. Now you'll find your Word options underneath the File tab. So again, we're jumping into that backstage area. And right at the bottom, you'll see we have Options. Now what this little area is, these are generally all of the options which kind of control how your version of Word works. And obviously this is going to be different for everyone depending on which options you have turned on or off in this little section. Now I'm not going to go through absolutely everything that we have in here, but I will point out a few things that I think are quite important. So currently we're on this general section, which you can see highlighted in grey, and there are a couple of things in this first group up here that I want to show you. The first one here is Show Mini Toolbar on Selection. If you remember, when we're working in a Word document, if we highlight any text, we get that little mini toolbar appear with some formatting options on it. And I did say in an earlier module that you can turn that off if you don't like it. And this is exactly where you would do that. So if you want to get rid of it, just untick that checkbox, and the next time you highlight, you won't get that little mini toolbar. You can also turn off the live preview. Now we've seen this live preview in action numerous times. So one time I can remember would be when we were trying to change the font. If you hover your mouse over the different fonts in the font list, you can actually see a live preview in the document of what that font is going to look like. The same when we hovered over the styles, it would show you what a heading 1, heading 2, heading 3 looks like without you actually clicking on it. That is what we call a live preview. And if you don't like that, you can also turn that off from here. Underneath this Personalize Your Copy of Microsoft Office, this is where you have your username. And this is quite interesting because when we were doing comments, if you remember, when we added a comment, it came up with my name. And the comments take your name from this area in your options. So whatever name is listed in here is what's going to show up in things like comments. So just be aware of that. Let's jump across to the Display tab. Now, throughout this course, we've been turning off and on our non-printing characters. And this section just here where it says always show these formatting marks on the screen. If you, for example, always wanted to show paragraph marks, then you could select this option just here. And that means regardless of whether you have non-printing characters turned off or on the ribbon, you'll always be able to see those paragraph marks in your document. So again, a few options for you to choose from in there. Let's jump into proofing. I just want to highlight to you that this is where we have our autocorrect options. Again, we've been into here in a previous module. And you also have some options in here related to spelling. So things like ignore words in uppercase, ignore words that contain numbers, flag repeated words. So you can go through here and turn these off and on as applicable to you. Also at the bottom here, if you don't like Word to check your spelling as you type, so when I start typing, if I spell a word wrong, Word immediately flags that to me because it's checking my spelling as I type. Now if you're someone who doesn't particularly like that, maybe you find it distracting or you just like to check your document all in one go at the end, then you can turn off that check spelling as you type option as well. Let's jump into save. Now, couple of things in here. It says here save files in this format. So by default all of my files are going to be saved in the .docx format, but you could change that to something else if you wanted to. And you can see that I also have Word set to auto recover my information every 10 minutes. Now if you want to make that less you can, or you can make it a longer time period, entirely up to you. I'm going to jump straight down into the Advanced tab now. Now there are so many different options in here and I would suggest you go through each of these and just turn off and on as necessary to really personalize your copy of Word. One thing I will highlight in here is right down at the bottom, we have this display group, and this is where I can specify how many recent documents I show. So when I go into my file option, it's going to give me a list of all the documents I've recently opened, and mine's currently set to show the last 50. So this is where you can go in to modify things like that. You can also do things like turn off and on your vertical or horizontal scroll bars, your rulers, all kinds of stuff in here, which I would advise you to take a good look at. Customize ribbon. This is where you can go if you want to add a particular command to one of the ribbons that you have in your copy of Word. Now currently I have popular commands selected, so all of the most popular commands are listed in alphabetical order in the list below. If I wanted to see all of the commands that are available in Word, I could change this to all commands, and we get the whole catalogue. And I could go through, and if I wanted to, let's just say align top. If I wanted to make the align top command available on a particular ribbon, I can just go here and I can select the ribbon, so it might be the insert ribbon in the tables group, and I can say add, and it will put that command into the tables group on the insert ribbon. So that's a nice area you can go to really set up your ribbons how you want them to be. And then we have the quick access toolbar, where you can again customize which commands will appear on your quick access toolbar. So that's a very brief look. I've just gone over some of the key points. It would take a very, very long time to go through absolutely everything in this section, but I do advise that you do have a good look through some of these options, really to set up your copy of Word so that it works in the most efficient way for you. So that's it on your Word options. We're going to move on to Module 2 now, where we're going to talk about protecting a document. So I will see you then. Hi again everyone, and welcome back to our course on Word 2019. We're down in section 16 in Module 2, where I want to speak to you briefly about how to protect a document. So when we're talking about protecting documents, what we mean is if we're going to share this with someone or send the document to someone, we want to be able to set a password so that they need to know the password before they can open it and modify it. So let me just quickly show you how you can do that. So I've got a document open here, and this is the document that I want to protect. So I'm going to jump into the File area, and I'm going to go to Save As. And I'm actually going to browse to a location to save this. And I'm just very briefly going to change the name to Protecting Documents 2. And what I can do from here, so when I'm in the process of saving my document, this is when I can set the protection on that document. So instead of just clicking Save, I'm going to click this little drop down next to Tools, and I'm going to go to General Options. And you'll see in here, the first thing that comes up is to set a password to open. So there are two passwords I can set here. I can set one to open, and I can set one to modify. So if the password's required to open the document, it means as soon as somebody tries to double click on that document to open it, they're going to be prompted for a password. With the second option here, if I've shared this document with someone, it means they're going to need a password in order to make any modifications to that document. And you can set one or you can set both. Again, it's entirely up to you. So very quickly, I'm just going to set a quick password. I'm going to click on OK, and it's going to ask you to re-enter your password. And there we go. So now I can just click on Save. And I'm going to very quickly close this document down. And we're going to reopen it so you can see that password protection in action. So let's go to Open. And it's there at the top of my recent documents list. So I'm going to click on it. And you can see it's asked me for my password. And there we go, my document is open. It is as simple as that. So that's it, protecting documents, very, very straightforward. In the final module in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about macros, so I will see you then. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course on Word 2019. We've made it all the way down to our last instructional video. We are in Module 3 of Section 16, and we're going to finish this off with macros. Now, you'll probably hear people talk about macros a lot, and they are a wonderful utility for really improving your efficiency when it comes to carrying out tasks. But what I find is people talk about macros a lot, but they don't really understand what a macro is exactly. Now, a macro is great if you have a repetitive task that you have to do on a regular basis, because what you can do is you can essentially run through that regular task in Word and record it and save it as a macro. And then you can rerun that macro every single time you need it, and it will rerun all of those steps that you took. So it essentially records your keystrokes, saves them into a little file called a macro, and makes it available for you to use in any of your documents. So let's demonstrate creating a macro so you can see exactly how that works. So I've got a basic document on the screen here, and I want to add a header and a footer to this document. And I'm going to record it as a macro so that I can rerun it in a different document to add the same header and footer. Now, one thing to remember is that you do need to run through the process yourself once in order to record it. Now, macros are kept on the View ribbon, and you'll see you have a little macros drop down here. Now, I just want to draw your attention to this first of all, where it says View Macros. Now, currently this is empty. We haven't recorded anything, so there's nothing in here. But you'll see in a minute when we record our macro and we give it a name and we save it, this is where you would come if you wanted to rerun your macro in a different document. So you would select it from the list and click on Run. So just bear that in mind, because we are going to come back to here once we've recorded our macro. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the macro off recording. So we can see here we've got an option for Record Macro. And I need to give my macro a name. So I'm going to call this my initials, and we're going to call it Header and Footer. And it's really important to note that you can't have any spaces in your macro name. Now, if you wanted to, you could choose to make this even more efficient by assigning your macro to a button on your ribbon or to a keyboard shortcut. Now, I'm not going to do that at the moment, but just be aware that you do have those options. I need to choose where I want to store my macro. So I want this macro to be available to all of my documents. And sometimes it's quite good to write a description of your macro. You imagine if you've got quite a few macros, and sometimes if you're sharing macros with other people, you might want to put a little description there as to what the macro does. So I'm going to say inserts a header and footer. And I'm going to click on OK. Now, as soon as you click on OK, your macro is recording, and you can see my cursor has changed to a little cassette tape. And you can also see this little square down in my status bar. When I hover over it, it says a macro is currently recording. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hadn't you better hurry up inserting your header and footer? The macro doesn't actually record the length of time it takes you to do a task. It purely records your keystrokes. So essentially, it's not really recording anything whilst I'm doing nothing. So let's start off this process. I'm going to insert a header and a footer. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to Header, and I'm going to say I want this one just here. And I'm going to type in the company name, so Smith Properties. I'm going to tab over to the end, and I'm going to insert the date and time. And I'm just going to do it in that format. And then I'm going to jump down to my footer, and I'm going to put in a blank footer. And down here, I'm going to put in just the page number at the bottom of the page. So let's just say that one there. And that's all. Now, one important thing to remember here, if you're recording a header and footer macro, is to close that header and footer. I can't tell you how many times that I've forgotten to do that. So when I actually do run my macro, it kind of stays stuck in that header and footer area. So that is basically all I want my macro to do. Just insert that header and footer. So now I need to stop my macro from recording. Now, the quickest way to do that is to go back down to the status bar where we have that black square, and I can just click and that will stop my macro from recording. So now let's jump up to that View ribbon, and go back into our macros area and view macros. And now we can see our macro just there. Now I'm going to run this so you can see what it looks like, but first of all I need to just delete this. So the quickest way is just to delete the information out that we already have in there. And I'm going to run my macro and you're going to see it's going to add that header and footer. So let's go to View, let's go to Macros, View Macros. I'm going to select it and say Run. And would you look at that? There we go. There is our page. So really simple and really efficient. Now, I'm sure you can probably see there how that can really kind of speed up how you're doing things when you're working in your Word documents. You can have as many macros set up as you like, and you can run them whenever necessary. Some additional reading that you might want to do because it's not within the scope of this course, but some of the more advanced macro options will actually allow you to assign macros to buttons, and you can place them on the toolbar. You can even place them on the quick access toolbar, which makes it even quicker for you to just click on that macro and run it. It's a really great efficiency tip. So a little bit of further reading for you to learn how to do that. Well, that about wraps up all of the tutorial videos. All that's left now is for us to jump across to section 17, where we're going to do a quick wrap up of the course. So I will see you over there.